I think I'm entitled. You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is March 13th, 2013. And here are your updates for today. Let's go into, we have a big show today, bear with it, a very special surprise at the very end for you guys. Alrighty then, so stay tuned, watch the whole thing. You might have to stop and go back to it. It's about over an hour, but I'm showing you everything that I've seen. Very interesting things. So, okay then, including I never seen a meltdown on the Alex Jones show where he stays calm. Max Kaiser has like a meltdown on there. So, watch carefully. Watch this whole thing, because it's very interesting, and then a special surprise at the end. Very end. Alrighty then. Let's go into the Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. Meteor explodes in sky over South Africa. Heads up! The meteors are still coming in. WHO confirms 15th case of deadly new virus in Saudi Arabia. And also yesterday, Comet Pan starts to make appearance over North America. Remember, we're going to be able to see it all the way through to the 20th. Alright, moving on. Doing this show early so you have time to watch the whole show. Moving on. Breaking news. Let's check that out real quick. Alrighty then. Oh, we do have a new Pope. Argentine Cardinal Bergoglio elected Pope 2013. Alrighty then. And he took the name of St. Francis. Alrighty then. Let's see what else we have going on here. Pope Francis. Alright, that's it with the breaking news, because that's all you're going to see on there. Let's go into E&E News, Energy News. I'm going to try to keep my part short so you can watch this whole thing. Please watch the whole thing. It's very interesting. It might be very enlightening to you. Japan nuclear expert. Containment vessel continued to break at various spots, one after another, from Fukushima melted fuel. It lost the protective wall which seals in radiation. Heads up! Also today, it's like I'm watching a horror movie. Menacing crows all over Fukushima town. I didn't know a place would become like this. Also today, video. 10 million people in Japan have been abandoned in high radiation areas after Fukushima. Kanto region extremely contaminated. Heads up! Crimes against humanity. Japan professor. Fukushima release equivalent to 1,000 atom bombs, with a question mark after it. I believe it's higher than that. Alrighty then. Yesterday, very eerie. Reporter finds radiation levels 1,000 times over government limit far from Fukushima plant. A spot where kids walk to school. Egads. Such crimes against humanity. When is this going to end? If you watch my March 11th, you'll see what needs to be done. Alright. Also, we got the phone going in the background. TV, gas pipeline fire out of control in Louisiana Bayou, 19 miles long with fuel still inside, could burn for days. Also today, officials, spasmodic burst near giant sinkhole, around 100 microquakes reported overnight. Heads up. Around 100 microquakes reported overnight. Get out of there. Get away from the area. Step away from the sinkhole. 2 years ago today, New York Times reports U.S. would be harmed only by full meltdown at Fukushima. Months later, it's revealed full meltdowns occurred. Heads up! I'll read that again. 2 years ago today, New York Times reports U.S. would be harmed only by full meltdown at Fukushima. Months later, it's revealed full meltdowns occurred. What happened, mainstream media? You didn't report on it, did you? Well, I guess you have all been exposed also. It's just a matter of time for the symptoms. So heads up on that. Survey, 36% believe Fukushima radiation likely to have done significant harm to the U.S. Heads up. Heads up on all the people in charge of protecting the U.S. Wow. That's incredible. So we're still not going to talk about it because someone's going to jail. And even though you're not going to jail, guess who's going to be affected by the radiation? Alrighty then. Stay tuned. Please stay tuned. It's a big show. Obviously, this is all going to be very enlightening to you. Yes. Alright. Take care. And always be prepared. Always be prepared. It is 3 days down, Wednesday hump day. 2 to go before the weekend. I suggest everyone just get your things in order. And nobody panic and decide where everyone needs to, what they need to do and where to go, and maybe implement that as of right now. Alrighty then, take care, always be prepared, be safe, and stay tuned. Please watch this to the very end. And if you didn't catch March 11th show, please check that out too. This is a very enlightening show, very interesting. Alrighty then, take care. See you on the flip side tomorrow.
This is the final countdown, 622, and I'm making this important video today. I will call it a presentation. It is certainly about the things that are going on in our world today, specifically about the record-breaking weather and what is going on in that regard. But I ask that you pass this along to as many people as possible, for they need to be woken up and they need to know the truth. And today I'm not going to present my opinions, for they do not matter. But what does matter is the scientifically provable facts, the facts that the government is not telling you, the secrets that they are keeping and have been keeping for decades, in order to keep our society organized the way it is today anyways. So I will say one word of advice is to ask questions. Look around and ask questions. And when you keep asking questions, you will discover answers. And you will eventually discover the truth. And the truth can be frightening, but it certainly is liberating. The truth will set you free, as Jesus says. And I ask that you let the truth set you free. And let everything that I say today, go look it up, research it, but certainly consider all that I'm saying. And it's not my opinions, but it's the downright facts. So I have a lot to cover today, so please bear with me here. I'm going to cover a lot of topics, and hopefully do so in a very interesting and concise manner. So the first thing I want to go over is what causes our weather, and why is it so destructive and so violent as of recent. The number one driving force is the jet stream. The jet stream causes all weather and all boundaries, cold fronts, warm fronts, ride the jet stream. So what causes the jet stream to go crazy? we are seeing now that our jet stream is making wild gyrations. It's doing things we've never seen before in recorded history. It's gone over the North Pole, and it's never done that before. This past winter, it's gone directly over the North Pole, and it brought in Arctic air, and what it's doing over Russia, where they had the coldest winter in 70 years, and just more recently, the coldest January in over 100 years. They're having temperatures as cold as -70 degrees, -70. So why is the jet stream making all these crazy gyrations? You must understand what causes the jet stream, what influences it, and that is the Gulf Stream. Now, the Gulf Stream is a loop current that impacts the jet stream greatly. And the Gulf Stream is the heart and soul of our weather. It's what drives the jet stream. The jet stream and the Gulf Stream work synergistically together to create our normal balanced weather. If anything would ever happen to our Gulf Stream, our weather would change forever. Well, guess what? As of June 12th, 2010, the Gulf Stream stopped. Now, when I say stopped, I mean stopped working the way it used to. It is now broken. It no longer goes around, circumnavigates the whole planet. It used to go up into Ireland, England, Scotland, and give them their warmer winters. You see, it used to carry the warm Gulf waters up to them, making their climates more mild. Now, they are on the same latitude as Siberia, yet they do not get the same kind of winters as Siberia. Why is that? That is because of the Gulf Stream and what it used to do. I will say used to, past tense. That is by far one of the biggest things I want you guys to realize today, is that the Gulf Stream has in fact stopped, and that changes everything. That what drove our weather. When the Gulf Stream stops now, the jet stream has no regularity. It can and is doing unprecedented things. So that's why the jet stream is doing these wild gyrations. But why did the Gulf Stream stop? Again, keep asking questions. You will keep discovering answers. And what caused the Gulf Stream to stop? Well, let's go back. We need to go back to the 1980s. In the 1980s, scientists were greatly troubled, and they were very, very concerned that they had realized that from NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, they found out that by the early 1980s that the Gulf Stream had slowed down, and they were very concerned. I think by 30% that it had slowed down. And of course they didn't publish that story, but they were very concerned, and they knew how important the Gulf Stream was to our weather and what it would be doing, and what the consequence of the Gulf Stream having stopped would be. There's a lot to this Gulf Stream. I could go on for 10 minutes about how important the Gulf Stream is, so I encourage you, look up that fact. The Gulf Stream has stopped. Please look that up. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that today, but that is absolutely crucial. My goal is to keep asking questions. Why did the Gulf Stream stop? Well, scientists in the 80s have found out that, scientists from the 80s found out that it was slowing down significantly. And as time went on, 1990s, they found out that it was slowing down even more. And come the year 2005, NOAA found out that the Gulf Stream had been slowing down by more than 70%. And they predicted that in the next 5 to 20 years, the Gulf Stream would in fact stop, causing our weather to change dramatically. You cannot even imagine the impact that the Gulf Stream having stopped would create. It would create global floods of biblical proportions, droughts, and that's exactly what we're seeing today. The consequences are just now being manifested. And I can reference this one movie, The Day After Tomorrow, and we are living the day after tomorrow in slow motion. The whole premise of the movie The Day After Tomorrow, which was created in 2004, was around the fact that the Gulf Stream stopped. And I encourage you, if you have not already, go see the movie The Day After Tomorrow and view it as, from a scientific standpoint, as what happened in the movie. In that movie, the Gulf Stream stopped and it changed the weather. they knew the significance of what the Gulf Stream meant in the movie, and because of that fact, they were now having superstorms in that movie within a matter of days. Now obviously that's Hollywood, but isn't that not what we're seeing now? We're seeing all these superstorms, Superstorm Sandy, and it seems like every low pressure now is a superstorm. It is juiced up. It never is so powerful. It's not, well, the storms are not what they used to be. It seems like every storm has the amplification and the power times 10. So back to my question, why did this Gulf Stream stop? And then scientists found out that in 2010 that it did in fact stop working. Well, the Gulf Stream is based on the salinity of the salt water from the Gulf of Mexico and from all the oceans. So if you add salt, more salt content to that water, it will slow down within time. Well, the scientists were realizing that in the 80s and in the 90s and early 2000s, that the Gulf Stream was slowing down because the salinity in the oceans were changing. If you add more salt water to a stream of fresh water, you will slow down that current. That's exactly what they were finding out, and it's exactly what was in fact happening. And the question is, well, where was the salt water coming from? Where was this fresh water coming from? The oceans are salt water. Where was this basin of fresh water coming from to dilute and mix in with the salt water? Well, the evidence points to that the glaciers are melting, and that from the North Pole. Glaciers from the North Pole are made up of fresh water, which has no salt water in it. There is no salt in the glaciers from the North Pole. They were finding out that the ice caps from the North Pole were melting significantly, and water was mixing with the salt water, thus making the Gulf Stream weaker and weaker and weaker by the year. So finally, in 2010, it had enough and it stopped. And yes, the oil spill did actually help stop it, but the fact is it was stopping for more than 25 to 30 years prior to that. So no, the oil spill, a BP oil spill, did not stop it, but it was 25 years before then it was starting to stop because of the salinity of the oceans were changing. Now, this is a very important question. Why are the glaciers melting? Why are the glaciers at the North Pole melting faster than the ones at the South Pole? And actually at the South Pole, we have record-breaking ice there. You don't hear too much about that. All you hear is global warming, global warming. What about the record-breaking ice sheets that are forming in the South Pole and in Antarctica? But all you're hearing about is the northern hemisphere, the North Pole. The glaciers are melting, which is mixing with the salinity of the Gulf Stream, and it did come to a halt. It did stop. So why are these glaciers melting? The answer to that question is there is global warming. That is a fact, but not to what you think, not to what you've been told. The government has been lying to you. Shocker, right? The government has been lying to you. They knew what would be happening years into the future. They knew all this stuff would be occurring. So they had to think of a cover story to tell the people. They blamed it on global warming caused by carbon dioxide emissions from our cars and all our appliances today. But the fact is that has no basis for reality. That is totally a lie. That carbon dioxide can warm up the planet. You know what? Carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen and nitrogen. So guess what? Technically, their theory, if carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen, it should technically rise to the surface and melt, be able to melt the ice caps and be able to change the stratosphere. Carbon dioxide is in fact heavier of a gas than oxygen and nitrogen. So carbon dioxide stays at the lower level. It cannot even rise up to the surface and affect our ozone. So that just can't happen. So then what is causing the ice caps to melt, particularly at the North Pole? Well, there is global warming, just not like you've been told. The fact is, there is global warming, but it's from within. the Earth's core is significantly heating up. The Earth's core is what is causing all these domino effects to take place. And you see, one thing does lead to another. When the Earth's core is heating up, it melts the ice from the North Pole. The North Pole, from the melted ice caps there, mix the salinity and change the salinity of the Gulf Stream, and that stops the Gulf Stream. One thing leads to another. And so I'm trying to get to the source of all this. Why are all these changes happening? Why are the ice caps melting? Well, we now know that the Earth's core is heating up from within. And by the way, the ice caps are not melting from the top. Because even if it was global warming the way the government says it is, from carbon dioxide, the ice caps would be melting from the top, because the CO2 would be rising and it would melt the ice caps from the top. They're not melting from the top. The ice caps are melting from the bottom down. It's like a pressure cooker. So that can't happen. That's a total lie on their end. So why is the Earth's core warming up? That's what you must ask yourself. Keep asking questions, you will keep discovering answers. What is going on? And as a matter of fact, you must look at the bigger scheme, the bigger cosmic picture. Is the Earth just experiencing changes, or are all planets experiencing changes? Well, it also happens to be that the latter is true, that all the planets in our solar system are undergoing significant changes. The planet Mars is undergoing superquakes. Jupiter's core is liquefying. And there's many other changes with all the other planets too. And the orbits, like with Uranus, has a dimple in it. And all the other planets are experiencing some kind of change. And actually all of the other planets are also experiencing global warming, where there are no people, where there are no carbon dioxide emissions. So, I ask you, why are all the planets warming up? And could there be a cosmic trigger to all this? What is going on in our solar system and in the universe to make all this nonsense actually fit together like one big puzzle piece? As you will see, this is all one big puzzle piece, and I hope to present to you today what the facts are, and piece by piece we can figure this out, and we can become educated and learn about what is going on. So I'm going to keep going on with these facts here. And I'm going to ask you this next question. Are there historical records of catastrophes on our planet? And is there a cyclical nature of what we saw throughout all of our recorded history? The answer is yes, absolutely yes. There is a definite finite pattern of cyclical disasters and catastrophe. There is a definite finite rise and fall pattern for humanity. And that pattern happens to be every 3,600 years, about 3,600 years or so. Where every 3,600 years, civilization on this earth gets basically wiped out and reduced to nothing. And they have to start all over again. So I'm going to give you a few of the facts about this 3,600 year cycle and what we are seeing. Okay, so 3,600 years ago, what did we see and what happened? 3,600 years ago was the fall of Jericho, Sodom and Gomorrah, the exodus out of Egypt, the destruction of the first Babylonian Empire, the Sup and Shia civilizations were wiped out, the Minoans and the first Egyptian dynasty. All these civilizations collapsed at the same time, roughly 3,600 years ago. Also, at that time, the Egyptians had a 360-day calendar, that they had to change that, which those that did survive these cataclysms, they had to change it to 365 days. So something changed the orbit of the Earth. Something pulled the Earth out of its orbit and made it longer to revolve around the sun on a given year. In other words, a pole shift happened, and that changed the Earth's axis as well, axis of rotation, causing a new north and south pole. So let's back up 3,600 years before that. We had the creation of the Byzantine calendar, which we still go by today, and we have many historical records of supervolcanoes and mega tsunamis happening all over, and which was including the Noah's flood, which Noah's flood is not a fictitious story. There are many accounts all over the world that are in sync with what with Noah's flood and his account of what happened, and him building the ark and saving humanity. 3,600 years before that, Plato dated the sinking of Atlantis, and we go back 3,600 years before that, we have the mass extinction of all large mammals of the world, including the woolly mammoth, the giant American deer. And by the way, those frozen woolly mammoths were found flash frozen with undigested food particles in their stomach. So whatever these cataclysms may be, we know, we have scientific evidence that they happened rapidly. They happened very, very quickly. And the big argument today is, well, if a pole shift were to happen, we would have several years. That takes thousands of years for it to happen. Not according to civilizations of old, not according to past records. That's not what they say. Actually, it's a very sudden and drastic change, and the poles shift before your eyes. That would explain why the woolly mammoths were found flash frozen with undigested food particles in their stomach. So, our planet is littered with the remains of violently destroyed civilizations, the ruins lying underwater off present-day Egypt, Greece, Malta, Japan, India, Cuba, the Bahamas, Azores, and Bermuda, and that many other locations around the world are calling out to us, trying to send us a clear warning of the great cycles of destruction and the usual inundation that has claimed the lives of so many in the past and is once again rapidly headed our way. So, I want to say what is in fact coming our way next, and did our ancestors leave us signs that we would be able to know that these things will be coming our way. One of the references I want to leave you is the Kolbrin Bible. That's Kolbrin Bible, that has many references of sudden destruction. And it talks about a heavenly body, which also the ancient Sumerians talk about, what they called Nibiru, what many people of ancient civilizations called the destroyer. The prophet Jeremiah in the Bible talks about the destroyer cometh. And actually this heavenly body has many names: Tyche, Planet X, the destroyer, Nibiru. It can often be referred to as the sun's binary twin, its companion. It can also be referred to as the devil or Satan. And it comes around every 3,600 years and causes havoc. That seems to fit with what everything else I've been saying. That seems to fit with why all these civilizations have a rise and fall pattern of 3,600 years. Let me go into the facts about this other binary twin, our sun's companion, or our second sun, and does it in fact exist? I'm now going to move on to the facts about what this is and what our ancestors say about it as well. So, let's go back to the early 1980s, where many articles were in fact published about another large celestial body far beyond the outer solar system. That goes back to the Associated Press from 1981 edition. Now, kids, there are many articles in the early 80s written about this other large object that could in fact be affecting Earth in the not too distant future. As time went on, of course, they shut up about it. They didn't want anybody to panic or fear. So the government is what I want to jump to next. In 1979, we have many submarine veterans, submarine corps. They were given a briefing back in 1979, and there's many witnesses, there's many accounts of this actually taking place. They were given a briefing on a Saturday morning in 1979, and they were told the following. They were shown a map of the United States in this classified briefing, and on it they were shown with certain areas that were wiped out and certain areas were highlighted. And the ones that were highlighted were the ones that were told that they were safe havens to go for the future. And they were told that these oceans will rise up out of their basins and will cover all continents in your lifetimes. They were told, gentlemen, these events will happen in your lifetimes. So, which that does explain why we see today many retired veterans, especially with the U.S. Navy and the Submarine Corps, living in the Missouri, Arkansas Ozarks. For that was one of the safe havens that they were shown on this map back in 1979. And there are many proofs and eyewitnesses of these accounts that has gone public. John Moore has interviewed one named Tim Spencer, and he's gone public. He was in that briefing room back in 1979. So, what has the government known since 1979, and what did they know that will be coming our way in the not-too-distant future? Well, as I've said before, the early 1980s, they started to publish these articles. So it seems to me that ever since 1979, we see a big turn in the change of the world events. All of a sudden now, government started building bunkers. They started building underground facilities, including in Denver, in Sweden, in Denmark, all around the world. They have these large underground bases that can house millions of their people. Not for the average person, but only for their people. So what kind of other signs are we seeing that the government is doing to prepare for this event that is coming? Well, we've seen that CIA has relocated to Denver, which is the hills in Colorado. We also see that there are underground bases being built all over, and also one in Northcom, which is in charge of the military. They also moved their headquarters to Colorado. And we see these many bases that are moving to higher ground. And certainly, if nothing was going to happen, I ask you this one question. Then why are these underground bases being built? And excuse me, they're not being built, they are completed. They have been for several years now. But why are they being built 30 years ago? If nothing was going to happen in our lifetime, or very, very soon, why were they being built? And why would the government spend billions and billions of dollars constructing these underground facilities if nothing was going to happen in our lifetime? Think about that. And why would they have doomsday seed vaults all over the world? Not just one of them, but they have at least 6 or 7 of them all over the entire world that have all the seeds of every plant you can possibly imagine. So if one doesn't make these cataclysms, they will still have all the seeds left over to start civilization again. So, what kind of effects can the second sun have on the Earth? Well, we see that it definitely has a mass extinction level event on all civilization, and it makes it very difficult to survive. We've seen by historical accounts that the poles do shift, and surviving a geologic pole shift is very difficult to do. That's when the climate changes drastically, as we see with these woolly mammoths. They were flash frozen. So what are the other signs? We see an increase of large earthquakes by the strong gravitational effect of this second sun, which is in fact a dwarf star, as scientists have concluded. And by the way, there are scientists who do know the truth about what is going on. You just don't hear about them on the lame brain media. Scientists such as Professor James McCanney, Emmanuel Velikovsky, Zachariah Sitchin, all of them have written books over the years, and I suggest you look up their names and you look up the books that they've written, and you do your own research on the truth about our universe and how we do not have one sun. We have 2 suns that does in fact come around every 3,600 years, causing mass destruction, devastation, and death to our planet, and to actually changes all the planet's orbit every 3,600 years. This is well documented. I'm going to go into the description of what this second sun is and basically what it looks like and how we will see it. A dwarf star, which is what our sun's companion is. It is too low to sustain hydrogen fusion. It is almost invisible. It is so cold, roughly 10 to 40 degrees above absolute zero. The thing I want to reiterate is this is not a planet. People say planet X, planet X, planet X. Well, we'd be able to see it already. Where is it? It is not a planet. It is not a planet. It is a sun. It is a dark sun. you would not be able to see it. You will not be able to see it until it's right on top of you. But you would, in fact, feel the effects years or decades ahead of time, which the Earth has been experiencing. We cannot see it, but it does produce and distribute massive radioactive particles, which is why we're seeing such an increase of cosmic radiation, which is why it's dangerous to go out now in the summertime sun, or actually in the sun, and why we're seeing these skin cancers and UV burns. The sun is now dangerous. It's now a very toxic sun due to the increased ultraviolet light and from the thinning of our ozone. So, actually the majority of our stars in the universe are not a unary system, which if you think that we have one sun, you're wrong. We have two. We have two suns. The majority of the solar systems out in the universe have 2 or 3 suns, but one is the exception. Okay, we are not the exception. Just like when Copernicus, back in the 1600s, when he said that it was the Earth that revolves around the sun, they all laughed at him. They thought, oh, you're crazy. It is the sun that revolves around the Earth. But you know what? The people were wrong. He was right. Just as I say there are 2 suns, and the average person does not know that, is the same thing with Copernicus and how he was back in his day. The problem is we don't have 400 years. I don't have 400 years for me to be proven right. We have marginally, at best, a few months to a couple years. I don't know the exact timeline, but we are all seeing an increase in the crazy weather all around us today. So, back to this dwarf star. It is very heavily massed. It is the size of, and the mass, excuse me, of 8 Jupiters. It is the size of 3 to 5 Earths. I want to reiterate this. It has the mass of 8 Jupiters and the size of 3 to 5 Earths. Now, can you imagine what kind of effect this body would have on our Earth and our solar system? Yeah, we would be seeing facts. We would be seeing events and signs years ahead of its actual near approach to Earth. So let me get into that a little bit now. So, first of all, the slowing of the Earth's rotation. We've noticed for several years now, and even since late 90s, that the Earth's rotation is slowing down. And the magnetic field is collapsing. Part of why we're seeing this cosmic radiation, this UV, the strong ultraviolet light from the sun and our solar system. Yeah, we would be seeing facts, we would be seeing events and signs years ahead of its actual near approach to Earth. So let me get into that a little bit now. So, first of all, the slowing of the Earth's rotation. We've noticed for several years now, and even since late 90s, that the Earth's rotation is slowing down. And the magnetic field is collapsing. Part of why we're seeing this cosmic radiation, this UV, the strong ultraviolet light from the sun increasing, is because our magnetic shield is collapsing. Our magnetic shield is collapsing. And now the magnetic poles are drifting. The North Pole is moving drastically into Siberia, Russia, and the South Pole is also moving, causing our weather to become very, very strange. So this is partly why we are seeing all these animal die-offs, because of these shifting north and south poles, magnetically speaking now, because they are getting lost and they are wandering around, not getting to their location and destination safely. So they are basically dying en route, and we are seeing tens of thousands of birds, of fish, of whales, of turtles, of all these animals dying throughout the entire world every day, almost on a daily basis now. That sounds a lot like the book of Revelation, doesn't it? So, back to why are these poles shifting? Well, what it does is, The second sun is basically a strong magnet, and it basically is, as it gets closer to our Earth, it is pulling on our poles and moving them, and its south pole attracts to our north pole, and that's why our north pole is moving more quickly than our south pole, which is why we are experiencing, and even the winter of 2012 here in the northern hemisphere was not just a mild winter, it was a freaky warm winter. Last March of 2012, we had over 7,000 records broken in the U.S. alone. That just is not a warm spring or a mild winter. That is the precipice of a pole shift. That means we are close to a pole shift. So basically this star is causing induction. I want you to grasp this concept too. The Earth's metals are heating up. When I said the Earth's core is heating up, it is. But also it's causing the metals in the Earth's crust to heat up. This is why we're experiencing the large volcanism. There are volcanoes going off all over the planet almost on a daily basis now. You name it. In Chile, in New Zealand, in Russia, all over the world, we have volcanoes popping their corks. And back a decade ago, they were like something, 80 volcanoes were active. Now it's like 350 volcanoes are now active and becoming more numerous by the day. This other sun also has, if it has an effect on the Earth, you better believe it has an effect on our own sun. It's what our sun is driving it in. This sun is not out for the Earth. It actually orbits around our sun every 3,600 years. And that again is well documented. So what kind of changes does it produce on the sun? It produces massive solar flares, also what scientists call the kill shot, which is what we had in 1859, a Carrington event. We had an X-59 solar flare, which wiped out the telegrams and which caused a massive fire back then. If we had that same kind of solar flare today, bye-bye power grid, forget about having electricity ever again, it's gone. Okay, all you need is one massive solar flare to wipe out the power grid. It is so important that you be able to live off the power grid somehow, some way. Another effect of the second sun is increased space debris. Actually, one of my other videos talked about the 2012 DA-14 asteroid on February 15th. We are seeing that now. We are seeing an increase of comets, asteroids, and all kind of debris from outer space. This dwarf star has a 250 million mile debris field on both sides of it. It's important to note this star has never and will never hit the Earth. It doesn't have to though. Its large gravitational effect, its large dense iron and nickel core affects the Earth and is already wreaking havoc with us. So this is why out of the Oort belt we have all these comets and asteroids coming out, and interestingly enough scientists are now claiming 2013 as the year of the comet, as we had a record-breaking one on February 15th which did a lot of damage, which did break off, or at least it had a companion which broke off and hit Russia. And fireballs were also seen in Cuba, Miami, San Francisco, and all over the world that day. And we are seeing these fireballs all over the world now on a more daily basis. We used to, back maybe 30 years ago, see a fireball maybe on a yearly basis. We're now seeing them on almost a daily basis somewhere. They have definitely picked up dramatically. And also, we have a comet coming in March, one in April, and one in November. And so this year is certainly active with comets. And comets alone can set off large earthquakes. For instance, the New Madrid seismic zone was, last time that went off was in 1811, 1812, and ironically enough, the records say that at the time that went off, there was a large comet, and people saw that over the Midwest. But that earthquake was so powerful, it rang church bells on the East Coast. I do want to talk about the New Madrid in a little bit, and a little bit more on the earthquakes too. So we have all these prophecies now coming to pass right before our eyes. All these weather anomalies coming together. Not only does the U.S. Navy map of the future show the map of the United States totally changed. All coastlines gone. But we have prophecies like Edgar Cayce, Nostradamus, a prophecy of Our Lady of Fatima. They're all aligning to now. Even the ancients, like the Mayans and the Hopis, and the Aztecs too, they say, well, December 21st, and those who say, oh, well, December 21st come and gone. Who's to say that they didn't say December 21st would be the day, but rather a time frame of the beginning of the end, where December 21st would mark the period where things would start to change, and we would start to show signs of the second son's arrival. So don't get caught up in dates of what people say or what these Mayans say, but certainly there's a lot of information that they pointed to that we would be experiencing around this time. A lot of these earth changes are indeed ramping up. So we have all these prophecies now, and even the Hopis say that at the end of the fourth age we will see a blue star Kachina in the sky. All these civilizations, all these cultures from all over the world are now saying that we will see this other large body in the sky. And if to answer maybe some people's questions would say, well, if it's a dark star, if you can't see it, when will you see it? It's coming up from the south of the ecliptic plane, which means it comes up from the southern hemisphere. Which, oh, by the way, the IRAS, the infrared telescope the government constructed in the early 1980s, which cost millions of dollars, they've constructed a gigantic telescope right at the South Pole, Antarctica, an infrared telescope. Now tell me, why would the government need an infrared telescope and cost millions of dollars facing right towards the south of the ecliptic? Yes, they in fact have been watching this object for more than 30 years. They have been preparing their underground bases for that time. They've been prepping their own people within the military, like the submarines, the Submarine Corps, since at least 1979. They in fact know what's going on. They are concealing the truth, what is going on, simply because they want the society to remain as calm and as structured as possible until that last day. That is why they did not tell the people. However, I do want to say this. They are leaking the word out slowly through signs and through movies. For instance, the movie 2012, another great movie, along with The Day After Tomorrow. I recommend you see both of those from a scientific standpoint and see what kind of science they put in it. 2012 is a great movie, and it has many, many things that will happen scientifically and that do explain the effects of this second sun, Nibiru. For instance, it shows it starts off with a clip from outer space, showing that, in fact, that all the changes taking place are coming from beyond Earth, beyond our solar system. So, and also it shows the mega earthquake striking California, and California falling into the ocean, at least a part of it, anyways. Obviously, there is some Hollywood to that film, of course there is. But there is a lot of science behind it, and I watched it 3 times, and I realized that there's a lot to it, and they are putting subliminal messages. For instance, a large earthquake, like we had in Japan 2 years ago, will literally sink the ground right in. They had a tsunami wall breaker in Japan that was equivalent to the height of the tsunami that struck 2 years ago when that 9.0 earthquake hit. So in theory, there should have not been a tsunami. The wall should have kept the water out. How did the water get over? When you get a large earthquake, such as 9.0 or larger, the ground literally caves in, like it did in the movie 2012. It sinks right into the earth. And that's what happened in Japan. I forget by how many feet, 9 feet or so. The ground around the Daiichi Fukushima area in Japan of March 2011, it went right into the ground. It caved right in, and it allowed the water from the tsunami to pour in over the land, causing deaths to about 22,000 people. So one of the facts of the movie 2012 was just that you get a large earthquake, the ground will cave right in, and it did in Japan 2 years ago. So, what's up next for our timeline, and what else are we taking a look at? Well, I want to touch upon the earthquakes a little bit more and the New Madrid. the New Madrid is going to go off. The government knows that. All their maps say that it has the country divided up into two pieces. Denver being their New World Order capital of the West, and Atlanta, Georgia being the capital of the East. It will be divided up into two pieces, with Florida being all wiped out, and basically all the East Coast up to the Blue Ridge Parkway being destroyed as well, permanently. The water will be inundated there permanently. Again, we're talking about the East Coast, where tens of millions of people live, wiped out. We're talking about the West Coast of California, of Oregon, of Washington, wiped out as well. And the geography of the land out west, the North Pacific Northwest, those aren't mountains. Those aren't mountain ranges, as we saw with Mount St. Helens. They are active volcanoes. What scientists thought they were inactive volcanoes. They're not inactive. They are very active, as we saw in 1980 with Mount St. Helens. And the Pacific Northwest is what the geologists describe as the geological nightmare. So, what do I recommend? I recommend you get away from the coastlines. All our ancestors say to rise above the coastlines. The U.S. Navy says to move inland at least 800 feet, even though we've seen tsunamis much higher than that. But if you move far enough inland, it's not only how many feet above sea level, it's how close you are to the ocean. As long as you're far enough inland, you should be okay. A few of the other facts I want to describe to you how high these oceans were, how high these tsunamis were 3,600 years ago. Fact number one, in Texas, you have unfossilized seashells about 100 miles inland. Unfossilized meaning they did not have the time to become fossilized over millions of years. You have seashells in backyards of people in Texas, southeast Texas, that are about 100 miles inland. How did those seashells get there? You had to have a large tsunami carry the waters well inland. Along with that, the Salt Lake City in Utah. How do you think Salt Lake City got there? What lives in Salt Lake? Brine shrimp live in Salt Lake City. Salt water is not found in the middle of a continent, close to the middle of a continent anyways. It's several hundred miles inland, to say the least. It's not found several hundred miles inland just for the heck of it. A tsunami carried the water from Western California all the way from the Pacific Ocean to Salt Lake City, along with the several brine shrimp. So we have many facts that point to this is fact after fact. I ask you to do your own research, please, and come to the same conclusion. And let this change your life. You can't just bury your head into the sand anymore. We're far beyond that. But you need to wake up and realize that, what I'm saying, what if I'm right? And what if all these facts are right? So the government knows about the New Madrid now. The New Madrid will split open and divide this country in two pieces. And how appropriate, I think, biblically speaking and prophetically, the splitting up of this country is prophetic. United we once stood, divided we now fall. And the New Madrid seismic zone is absolutely huge. It will span from Wisconsin all the way down to Louisiana, which, by the way, we are seeing signs. We are seeing many earthquakes now on the New Madrid, including Arkansas, Oklahoma, and including the Louisiana sinkhole. That's growing by the day. It's 800 square feet wide, and that's not getting any smaller. Scientists are baffled. They don't know why that's happening. We're having these mystery quakes in Michigan and Indiana, these sonic booms happening all over that part of the world. The New Madrid is waking up, and is getting ready to go very soon. Now, it's important to know that if you live east of the Mississippi River, you are in great danger. You are in great danger. You will feel the tearing apart of the New Madrid. The U.S. Navy says, not me, the U.S. Navy says there will be at least 3 9.0 plus earthquakes around the New Madrid seismic zone when it does split open. And the tension goes east of the fault line. It goes north, south, and east. So if you live west of the Mississippi River, you will not experience the brunt of it. You should be okay. But if you're east of it, you will feel the equivalent of a 9.0 earthquake ripple through the entire eastern half continent of the United States. Why is this? Because of the geological structure of the United States on the eastern half is different from the west side. its different rock structure. When you have an earthquake in California or the West Coast, it's only that area feels it. That small area feels the earthquake. Not so with the East Coast or anything east of the Mississippi River. The granite changes. When you have an earthquake, such as we did in 2011, it was late August, when that 5.8 struck in Virginia. We felt that all over, even from Washington to Toronto to Cleveland to New York, up and down the whole East Coast. We felt it. And even a little while ago, in last October, I think, we had a 4.1 in Kentucky. That was also felt. All the way up into Canada and as far south as Georgia. A 4.1 was felt from Georgia to Ontario, Canada. Think about that. What on earth will a 9.0 do to that region, to the eastern half of the continental United States? So I encourage you, please do your research and look up all that I'm saying. And many prophecies point to this is the time that we will experience major catastrophes. And I know I said that the timeline, obviously nobody knows a date, but I will do my best to explain to you furthermore about this cycle and what we can expect. And I want to inform you when to expect major earthquakes, because I do know when the major earthquakes will roughly happen. Not a date, but a time frame. Now, I want to talk to you about this 188-day cycle, which was started or originated back in 2010, was where we really noticed it. We had on February 27, 2010, an 8.8 earthquake off the coast of Chile. About 500 people were killed, and that earthquake was so powerful it literally shook the earth off its axis by more than 3 inches. 188 days later was September the 4th, 2010, and that was our earthquake in New Zealand, Christchurch, New Zealand. And that was where we had a 7.1 earthquake there. 188 days later, we go to Fukushima, Japan, March the 11th, 2011, which we had a 9.0, and that one was absolutely devastating. It created a large tsunami, wiping out thousands of people. The death toll was roughly 22,000 people, and that area is still a disaster. If anybody is considering going to Japan or living in Japan, you have to get out. The radiation from Fukushima is horrible. The disaster is still growing every day and getting worse. For instance, the children and all the people in Japan are having symptoms of radiation poisoning. They're having diarrhea, they're losing their hair, and they're losing sleep. All 3 of those are classic symptoms of radiation poisoning. As we know that the government's doing absolutely nothing about the disaster at Fukushima. So what happened on March 11th is still an ongoing disaster. And many experts will tell you that. Of course, not the lame brain media, they won't tell you, but stats keep coming out, statistics and more facts keep saying back in November it was 42% of all children had thyroid tumors. 42% of all children had thyroid tumors. Now, the latest study says 44% of all children, 44% of all children are now impacted. And those who are young and who are very old are impacted the most by radiation. So, Japan is an ongoing disaster. But anyway, 188 days later, we have September 15th, where we had a 7.3 earthquake. Then we had 188 days later, we would be into actually March 22nd of 2012. But I want to explain something here. Last year, this 108-day cycle changed, and we had a lot of controversy with a lot of the scientists and those who are in the know, wondering what happened to the 188-day cycle. Why did it change? This is very, very important, guys. Please grasp this. 188-day cycle is only consistent and will only work if and only if the speed of our object, the speed of our secondary sun, remains constant the whole time. Every 188 days, we will orbit in alignment with it, either in front of it during the springtime, as we did in 2010, 2011, 2012, or the backside of it in the fall of 10, 11, and 12. But every 188 days, we experience the Earth goes through this cycle of coming in through alignment and a gravity trough with both suns, basically a tug of war between our sun and the second binary twin. So, what happened in 2012, and why weren't the days exactly 188 days apart as they were in 2010 and 2011? Well, again, that theory would hold true if this object's velocity remained the same. However, that is not the case, and many people are not considering that. Why the 108-day cycle changed is because the star increased its speed in 2012. How do I know this? Look at the earthquakes. The earthquakes changed their pattern of seismicity. We did not have a 108-day cycle. We had a longer period. Now, as this secondary sun approaches our sun's powerful magnetic field draws it in like a magnet, and the secondary sun increases its speed rapidly. Yeah, so its velocity is increasing now. So, what does that mean for our timeline, for our dates, for our 108-day cycle? It does not remain constant, it changes. And when the secondary sun Nibiru is traveling faster, it takes the Earth more days to orbit around its axis, orbit around the sun. It takes more time for us to come into an alignment. So, in theory, and it would take more days. That's exactly what we saw in 2012. Not a theory anymore, but a fact. 2012 then, we go to April 11th. So technically the 188-day cycle should have been on March 22nd. And we did have some major earthquakes right around March 20th, March 25th, and late March. But they were 7s. Followed the pattern here. In 2010 we had 8.8. 2011 we had 9.0. 2012 we should have a 9.0 plus, 9.2. And the date of the 108-day cycle, we only had a 7. But 2 weeks later, about 3 weeks later actually, we had an 8.7 and an 8.2 off Indonesia. That is your next date. That is your next alignment date. What happened on April 11th is the alignment date. No other scientist is saying that. Whatever happened on April the 11th is your alignment date. And we had 2 large 8.0 earthquakes, 8.7 and 8.2. And that, lucky, thank God that nobody died that day. What happened was we had a horizontal slip. The earthquake was so powerful, it jolted the Earth and it moved the fault line horizontally. Horizontal slips do not cause tsunamis. Vertical slippage causes tsunamis, which is what we had in Japan, we had in Indonesia actually back in 2004, which killed about 250,000 people. But what happened in April, what baffled the scientists, they were absolutely astonished, and they said, we should not be getting these massive earthquakes on this size. We are now getting 8.0, 8.5, 9.0 earthquakes on a yearly basis. Croatian scientists are now saying something's wrong. On average, we should be getting these every 500 years. These are happening every single year on the springtime part of our orbit. So, people were spared in, actually Sumatra was 8.7, which is Indonesia. 8.7, 8.2 struck. And that whole week in April, we had massive earthquakes. That was our timeline. That was our dates. Now, you go later now. So we see the timeline was delayed by 3 weeks. Go back into, technically the next set of dates should have been October, at 108 days from that. But again, that's only if the star is maintaining constant velocity. Its velocity is increasing, therefore our cycle has changed. So we had actually an alignment in the second week of November. We had 7.5, we had a 7.7, we had a whole bunch of earthquakes all over the world. Go look them up on the USGS. They weren't deadly or anything, but they were destructive. And actually the one in Guatemala was deadly. But our next set of dates was actually November. The second week of November we had our alignment. So what does that mean for 2013? Well, considering what we just had in the beginning of February with an 8.0, which was in Santa Cruz Islands, things are really ramping up. Our next date, our timeline I should say, will be between mid-April and mid-May. I am expecting and predicting, based on this cycle, again, not a specific date, because I don't know. I don't know the speed. I don't know the velocity of the star. If I knew the velocity, I could tell you the exact date. But I don't know the velocity. NASA does. The government does. I don't know what the velocity is. I do know that it's increasing, because as it approaches our sun, it picks up velocity, therefore altering the our cycle of 188-day seismic activity. So, our next set of dates will be mid-April to mid-May. I'm predicting towards mid-May a mega earthquake of 9.5, right around there, 9.0, 9.5 plus. That could be very destructive. That will be very destructive. That could kill millions of people. This is my warning to you. Please, if you live along the coastline, specifically the Pacific coast of America or anywhere along the Ring of Fire, you must get out of there by the middle of April to mid-May. I'm not saying pack up and move in a few months, but I'm just saying at least by May, go to a safer spot, because your life is in danger. And we will see these earthquakes up to then start to pick up, for we are approaching the next alignment date. But each year it gets closer and closer to us until it eventually causes a pole shift and causes the 3 days of darkness, where it literally takes the Earth and it moves it out of its orbit, and the northern hemisphere will go into 3 days of darkness, as many prophecies predicted back many years ago. So we are seeing all this fulfilled in our time. Well, guys, I'm going to try to wrap this up now. I don't want to go too much longer here, but I hope you understand all that's coming our way, that this second sun does in fact exist. The government knows it. The government knows it. The government has been preparing for it. Question is, are you ready? Are you prepared? And if not, why not? What are you waiting for? You don't want to become a victim. As we saw from Hurricane Sandy, the government is not here to help you. I think Ronald Reagan said the 9 most scariest words ever spoken to mankind are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." So, with that, please get prepared, move to higher ground. You will not survive if you're along the coast. You will not survive if you're below 400 feet or lower, especially if you're along the coast area. Please research on this, not to instill fear in you, but certainly we must trust in the Lord, and He will guide you in times of distress, and He will lead you. And people say, well, if it's not my time, I'm not going to die. True, you won't. But the point is, I'm telling you this today to warn you that if you don't move, if you don't do something, you're not going to make it. And it's just not, it's not that you're just going to die. It's going to be a miserable, horrible death, because you're not going to have any food or any water. You must get prepared. Primarily spiritually, though. That's where the angle I want to come at this, because guys, when you look at all this information, and I didn't even cover, a third of it. I could keep going on for hours talking about what's coming, but I'm not going to anymore. It's too much. There's so much stuff that's happening and that's going to happen. There's like 20 different variables that are coming at us, and the only way you can deal with this is through prayer, and if you call on the name of the Lord, and He will save you. He will in times of distress, and He will lead you. And people say, well, if it's not my time, I'm not going to die. True, you won't. But the point is, I'm telling you this today to warn you that if you don't move, if you don't do something, you're not going to make it. And it's just not, it's not that you're just going to die. It's going to be a miserable, horrible death, because you're not going to have any food or any water. You must get prepared. Primarily spiritually, though. That's where the angle I want to come at this, because guys, when you look at all this information, and I didn't even cover, a third of it. I could keep going on for hours talking about what's coming, but I'm not going to anymore. It's too much. There's so much stuff that's happening and that's going to happen. There's like 20 different variables that are coming at us, and the only way you can deal with this is through prayer, and if you call on the name of the Lord, and He will save you. He will protect you. So please pay attention to these earth changes. We will see a mega earthquake, though, sometime April to mid-May. Mid-April to mid-May. I'm predicting towards the middle of May. And a lot of the government agencies are saying maybe May 17th for a possible pole shift. But I don't think a pole shift, just a major earthquake. So please get prepared, do your own research, and I will leave you with this one quote. This is from Prophecy from Mother Shipton. She was in the 1500s. For she says, For 7 days and 7 nights man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain and shore, and flooding waters rushing in will flood the lands with such a din that mankind covers in muddy fen and snarls about his fellow men. Man flees in terror from the floods, and kills and rapes and lies in blood, and spilling blood by mankind's hand will stain and bitter many lands. He bares his teeth and fights and kills, and secrets food in secret hills. How about that? And ugly in his fear he lies, to kill marauders, thieves, and spies. Who survives, and then will begin the next human race, but not on land already there, but on ocean beds, stark, dry, and bare. So yes, during a pole shift, we have continents that sink into the ocean, but are gone forever, but ones that will rise up, new ones that will emerge. Not every soul on earth will die, as the dragon's tail goes sweeping by. Not every land on earth will sink, but these will wallow in stench and sink. Of rotting bodies of beast and men, of vegetation crisp on land. But the land that rises from the sea will be dry and clean and soft and free. Of mankind's drift and therefore be, mankind's dirt and therefore be, the source of man's new dynasty. And those that will ever fear the dragon's tail for many years. But time erases memory. You think it's strange, but it will be. And when the dragon's tail is gone, man forgets and smiles and carries on, to apply himself too late, for mankind has earned deserved fate. So basically, we have this passage from Mother Shipton saying, within time, the people forget about the second sun, and just like those that thought the earth was flat, those who thought that the earth was the center of the galaxy, or geocentric, then you get a guy like Copernicus who says, no, it's the sun is the center and the earth revolves around that. Well, they laughed at him. So I'm going to leave you guys with that, and this is the final countdown, signing off, saying, praise be to Jesus, who by his precious blood has redeemed us. May God bless you. Thank you for listening. Please pass this on.
Just a few months off, but if we go 11 years previous, we get to the time of 9/11 here in America. And I want to take you to a brief flashback of 9/11. Now folks, how many of you can remember that before 9/11, before September 11th happened here in America, everything was different. We did not have Homeland Security. We did not have a Middle Eastern presence. We didn't have the Iraq War. We didn't have any of that mess. America had been in peace. Before 9/11, America was on the good side. But then 9/11 happens. And very quickly, the foreign policy of America made it very clear that we were going to begin the war on terror. And very quickly after 9/11, I can still remember this, Vice President Dick Cheney stated that America must now go to the dark side in order to fight the war on terror. That statement spoke volumes.
We have to work toward the dark side, if you will. We're going to spend time in the shadows in the intelligence world. A lot of what needs to be done here will have to be done quietly, without any discussion, using sources and methods that are available to our intelligence agencies.
America is going to go to the dark side. And sure enough, America did go to the dark side. We began to torture people. The Patriot Act was passed. The National Defense Authorization Act was passed. Posse Comitatus was thrown out the window. The Constitution was butchered. Patriot Act Part 1 and then Part 2. Homeland Security was developed. And then we went into Iraq very soon after that. And when that happened, we also went into the ancient city of Babylon. Saddam had been working on recreating Babylon like it was in the days of old, according to archaeology. And when we went into Iraq, how many of you remember that our soldiers had taken pictures of the recreation of Babylon? So America, by default, went into Babylon and in the physical realm, we were there. Our boots were on the ground. The United States of America was there. And the United States of America took possession. And in the natural, that's what happened. But in the invisible realm, this is what happened, folks. In the invisible realm, a transference occurs. A transference in the invisible realm of the powers of darkness that had existed in Babylon for eons of time, that had been sleeping, was awakened. And when the United States of America arrived in Iraq, that darkness of Babylon was transferred to America. And that started right after 9/11. And it was confirmed with Dick Cheney saying, we're going to the dark side.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi.
I agree things are degenerating quickly. They're talking about all sorts of economic unraveling while saying everything's great to the general public. But the more internal memos are, oh, you know, danger, Will Robinson. So they're going to spin even an all-out depression as milk and honey. Like they've spun things in Greece. Children starving to death is a wonderful thing, and that, you know, Greece is doing great. So if you're right about the collapse accelerating, how will the public respond as the media announces the economy's great, there are no bullets, there are no checkpoints, there are no armored vehicles, the TSA doesn't grab your genitals, the Easter Bunny is real, Santa Claus is real, there are no drones?
We already talked about this, Alex. I think the public has missed a window of opportunity. Constitution says under Second Amendment, if tyranny comes along, you have a constitutional obligation to pick up your firearm and take back your government. The threshold for that tyranny has passed already in the year 2000 with that thrown election. We've had now 15 or 20 instances when tyranny threshold as per the Constitution has been passed. The NDAA, the Patriot Act, the list goes on and on. America did not act. Therefore, America has no one to blame for itself. America is finished. It's lost its sovereignty. It's over. I'm tired of talking about when are Americans going to act, or if they're going to act, or is it time to act. It's time to act is past. Get over it. You're done. Just stop whining.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. There's more of an awakening now than ever. I totally disagree with that, Max, and I understand that.
I know you disagree with it.
Yeah, well, you're... listen.
What threshold of tyranny are you looking for? What do you need? What does it take? Does John Kerry have to come into your home and physically, you know, perform and act a disgraceful act, in person? I mean, what is it going to take? What more degrading act by your government do you need before you
Hey, what's stopping you? Listen, the feds are going to blow stuff up and blame it on us. They want a confrontation. They want to get a physical fight going because we're winning the info war.
You have to steal before they get prosecuted as a criminal. How much more? It's gone. The threshold's been passed. There's no going back.
No, it takes a lot of tyranny before. Listen, people are waking up big time right now, Max. Let's go to a phone call. Scott in Colorado.